Top 5 biggest upsets in darts history. If you're a darts fan, then you must know the amazing story of how Kirk Shepherd, a player ranked 142nd in the world, dropped jaws by reaching the World Darts Championship final, upsetting all the favourites in the process. But guess what? There have been other head-bursting upsets in darts, and I'll be telling you about 5 of the most unbelievable ones. Stick around. First, we have to go all the way back to 1983, the year Keith Deller did what no one believed was possible. He tore up the darting script and rewrote it with his name in bold, underlined, and in flashing neon lights. At just 23 years old and entering the tournament as an unseeded qualifier, Deller wasn't even supposed to make it past the first round. But what followed was one of the greatest Cinderella stories darts has ever seen. Deller took on and defeated the legendary John Lowe, the reigning world number 1. Not only was Lowe expected to breeze through the early rounds, but most fans had never heard of Deller at that point. That win alone raised some eyebrows, but no one thought lightning would strike twice. But it did. Next in line was Jockey Wilson, and yes, Deller beat him too. Wilson, a fan favourite and a future 2-time world champ, couldn't stop the young man from Ipswich. What made this moment so amazing was that Deller showed no signs of nerves. He finished with precision and played with the kind of cool confidence usually reserved for seasoned pros. Then came the final test. Eric Bristow, the man with the swagger, the skill and the ego to match. Bristow was the odds-on favourite, already a world champ and a dominating figure in the sport. But none of that fazed Deller. When Bristow deliberately avoided leaving Deller a 138 checkout, believing it was too tough to hit, Deller stepped up and did the impossible. Treble 20, treble 18, double 12. Bang! Game over. The crowd erupted.
12 for the title.
Deller had just completed what is now famously known as the Deller checkout. He became the youngest ever world champ at that time and the first qualifier to win the title. The darts world was turned upside down. Keith Deller's victory wasn't a fluke, it was a moment of pure sporting magic. He didn't just beat the best, he beat the 3 best players in one go. That run in 1983 still gives chills to darts fans today and proves that sometimes fairy tales really do come true. Next up, we travel back to the 2014 PDC World Championship, when a 23-year-old Michael Smith pulled off a win so massive, even his own jaw hit the floor. Going into his second round match against Phil Taylor, the 16-time world champion, the living dartboard destroyer, the man simply known as The Power, Smith was seen as little more than a warm-up. He was seeded 32nd, but Taylor? He was a multi-time champion and one of the greatest to ever throw tungsten. Nobody gave Smith a chance. Why would they? Taylor had dominated the sport for 2 decades. His mere presence on stage caused opponents to wilt. His stare could melt steel. But on that day, Smith didn't blink. From the start, Smith showed he came to fight. He traded legs with Taylor, refused to be intimidated, and matched the legend dart for dart. He fired in maximums with confidence and kept the pressure on. But it wasn't just about scoring big, it was his composure and ability to hold it together under pressure that stood out. The match went the distance, tied at 3-3 in sets, going into the deciding 7th set, and that's when Michael Smith made his move. He took control, broke Taylor's throw, and with ice in his veins, he nailed the match-winning double. Final score, 4-3. The crowd exploded. Smith had done it. But this wasn't just a win, it was an earth-shattering moment in darts history. Smith's victory was the first time Taylor had lost that early in a world championship in over a decade. It showed that the future of darts was arriving, and it looked like a young man from St Helens was it. Even Taylor admitted afterward that Smith was unbelievable, and he was right. That win gave Smith the confidence he needed to rise through the ranks and become one of the sport's top stars in the years that followed. Because Michael Smith didn't just beat Phil Taylor, he slayed a giant, shocked the world, and earned his place in the darting history books. Moving on to James Richardson, the man who wasn't supposed to win. In fact, most fans didn't even expect him to put up much of a fight. Going into the 2012 PDC World Championship, Richardson was a part-time player who made his living as a bricklayer. He had zero major experience and was virtually unknown outside the darts community. His opponent? None other than Raymond van Barneveld, a 5-time world champion and living legend in the game. On paper, it looked like a formality. But darts isn't played on paper, and Richardson had other plans. From the very first dart, Richardson showed he wasn't there to be anyone's warm-up act. Calm, focused, and fearless, he threw with the confidence of a man who had nothing to lose, and he didn't. The pressure was all on Barney, and Richardson capitalized. He quickly broke Van Barneveld's throw, piled on heavy scores, and nailed his doubles like he'd been doing it on the big stage for years. The most jaw-dropping moment came when Richardson pulled off not one, but two 145 checkouts. That's not a common feat. That's a, wait, did that just happen kind of moment. The crowd, who were initially quiet in anticipation of a routine Barney win, started roaring with disbelief and admiration. In straight sets, Richardson dismantled one of the game's greatest players 3-0. It wasn't just an upset, it was a masterclass, and what made it even more special was Richardson's reaction. He didn't gloat, he just smiled, raised his arms in quiet triumph, and took it all in. It was the biggest night of his career, and he just made history. This wasn't just a shock result, it was a reminder that in darts, reputation doesn't win matches. Nerves of steels and a smooth throw do. Now, if you told someone in 1999 that a London taxi driver would walk into the World Championship and whitewash Dennis the Menace Priestley, they'd probably laugh and then ask what you'd been drinking. But that's exactly what happened when John Ferrell, a little-known qualifier with a day job behind the wheel, turned up and delivered one of the most unforgettable upsets the sport has ever seen. Look, Dennis Priestley wasn't just some random player. He was a former world champion, widely respected for his precision, experience, and icy composure. He was expected to glide through the early rounds without breaking a sweat. But from the moment Ferrell stepped on stage, you could tell he wasn't intimidated. Ferrell came out firing. He didn't ease into the match, he didn't play it safe, he went straight at Priestley with scoring power that shocked even the most seasoned commentators. Triple 20s? No problem. Clinical doubles? Nailed. Priestley, meanwhile, seemed off the pace. Maybe it was nerves, maybe it was just one of those nights, but whatever it was, Ferrell made sure to take full advantage. What really stood out was Ferrell's confidence. For a guy who wasn't even on most fans' radar, he played like he belonged on that stage. He didn't let the occasion get to him, didn't let the name across from him throw him off. And before anyone could even process what was happening, the match was over. 3-0, a clean sweep, an absolute stunner. Fans in the crowd looked at each other like they'd seen a ghost. Priestley was out, Ferrell was through, and the darts world was left scrambling for answers. But what made the upset even more legendary was its lasting impact. John Ferrell didn't go on to win the tournament, but his name lives on in darts folklore because of that one unforgettable night. It's a perfect example of why you never underestimate the underdog, especially one who knows how to throw and isn't afraid to take his shot. Now, this is one of those stories you just wouldn't believe unless you were there. In 2008, Kirk Shepherd went from complete unknown to global sensation almost overnight. At just 21 years old, Shepherd wasn't even close to being a household name. He worked in a sheet metal factory and had only turned professional a few months earlier. Ranked 142nd in the world, no one expected anything from him. In fact, most fans didn't even know who he was when the tournament started. He pulled off one of the most unexpected runs in darts history. Shepherd's path to the final was nothing short of miraculous. He didn't have an easy route either. In his first match, he came up against the experienced Mick McGowan, but Shepherd held his nerve and pulled through. Then came Canadian veteran Barry Bates, and again the underdog came out on top. But things really started heating up when he faced the world number 4 Terry Jenkins in the quarterfinals. Jenkins had been in multiple major finals and was expected to steamroll the rookie, but Shepherd kept his cool, survived a match dart, and won 5-4 in one of the biggest shocks of the tournament. Next up was the charismatic Wayne Mardle in the semi-final. Mardle had just beaten Phil Taylor in an absolute thriller and looked like a man on a mission. But the fairy tale continued. Shepherd didn't crumble under the bright lights. He beat Mardle 6-4 and somehow found himself in the final of the PDC World Championship. Unfortunately, the final itself didn't go his way. John Part, a former champ, was just too experienced on the big stage and beat Shepherd 7-2. But even in defeat, Kirk had already won in the eyes of the fans. He went from being completely unknown to making darts history in just 2 weeks. His run showed everyone watching that rankings, experience, and reputation don't always matter. What counts is stepping up when it matters most, and Kirk Shepherd did exactly that. So guys, which of these upsets shocks you the most? Head to the comments and tell us, and if you enjoyed this video, click to subscribe.